story. I want Uncle Jason here to tell you a bit of a story of where I've come from. So back in 2015, I was running a digital agency. We were a web design agency, and all we did was websites, and we were pretty good at it at the time, but we hit the end of the year, 2015, and I looked at my business partner at the time. We were like, we weren't rolling in Ferraris and making the millions we thought we were going to make by running this amazing company. And we're like, what is going on here? What's wrong? And so I went and I took a list of our clients over the previous 3 years, and right second on that list, in terms of the clients that had spent money with us, and I looked at the second client. It was a client, all we did for them was design and send out newsletters for them on sort of a weekly basis, and that was it. It was the easiest thing that we did in the business, and it was the least stressful thing, because once an email is sent, we couldn't change it, so we couldn't make any fixes to it. It was like too late. And we were like, wait a second, I think there's something in this. So instead of it being the pizza or the topping to our pizza, we decided to make email marketing our pizza. And so, look, at the time, we thought we were so great in everything that we did, that all we did, we never did any sales. I never went out and did any sales, picked up the phone. It was all referrals and word of mouth to sort of grow the business to where it was. And so I had to go build a list to now, like, listen, if we're going to be an email marketing company, we need a list, okay? And so what I did was, it's like, I'm going to need to find some people to email, to send out our first email to tell everybody, well, hey, we're an email marketing agency. And I went through and I just looked at our client list. I took my contact address book and I went through. I was like, oh, maybe not this person. They might, scream at us. And I put a list together of some friends and family, and then as well as obviously some ex-clients that we had worked with. There was probably 50 odd people on that list when we started on this. And we sent out the first newsletter telling people what we were just about to do, why we made the decision, our history of obviously expertise. We were sort of faking it till we made it type of thing, but we had done quite a lot of in the email marketing space already. And this was the first mail that we had sort of sent out, and these were the stats. Now, if you can see here, well, it's not exactly the greatest pointer, but Marissa at the top here, no, she did not open our mail 42 times. I mean, nobody goes ahead and opens a mail 42 times. But what I did know was Marissa had probably forwarded our mail to people internally in her company, and they were busy having a conversation about us that we were obviously not privy to. So all I did was I picked up the phone and I phoned Marissa and said, hey Marissa, we haven't spoken in at that time 3 years. And she was like, oh, funny you called. We've just been talking about you. I was like, that's so funny. And off the back of that, we landed a 700,000 Rand retainer client to do newsletters for this big green IT company you might see here in Johannesburg. And so that was really where email kickstarted to where we are today. All we do at Firing Squad is send out emails for our clients and for ourselves and nothing else. And so I want to take you guys a little bit through about why email marketing is so effective and what it can do to your business still in 2020. But one thing I want to, we're going to start with the why, but what I want to tell you is it's not sexy. It's not as sexy as that little Yoko machine that sits on your if you've got a point of sale system, or the Facebook ad that runs through to a landing page and all these like sexy ads you're seeing on Instagram, and you've got a live chatbot running. It's not as sexy as that stuff. Email's been around for 20, 30, more, 30 odd, 35 years. The protocol hasn't changed since it was pretty much invented. But the point is, if you get email marketing right, and if you get get it right working in your business, it is going to outperform any other marketing channel you can think, any of them, from PPC, from Facebook ads to SEO to anything. And so it's just to realize that sometimes the new sexy shiny thing that you're going to see that someone puts up, oh, here's a new app that you need to go check out for your business, it sometimes becomes a distraction to something just honing down and focusing on one thing. So the first thing is, it's highly measurable. Now, I'm not talking about just, cool, open rates, click-through rates, who's opened the mail, that type of thing. Cool, that's part of what you're going to get. But realize also that with email, if a person clicks on a link from your newsletter, you know what they've then landed on your website. And if you have a very simple tracking system in place, you know what web pages they've then visited or what content they might have consumed, right? Then you also have all the tracking of what products they've maybe not even bought, they've looked at, or maybe put into their cart. You don't get that type of stats from Facebook or when you're doing SEO, because you don't know what those people are until they actually give you their details, which is an email address, which you then can go and market to. Secondly, it's the highest ROI you're going to get out of any of those channels, and that explains exactly. I sent out one mail, 50 people, cost us probably $10 to do that. But the point is that the costs of doing email in terms of the ROI of it is the highest across, and it is fact. In terms of, if you look at it, SEO, how long that takes to implement, how much time and effort you have to put into that, getting an agency to do that, the costs involved. PPC, you don't own the platform. So if you look at Nike no longer on Facebook, they might have a couple of million fans on Facebook. They no longer do native posts, right? Organic Facebook posts. They have to pay in order to talk to their audience on Facebook. They do not own that audience. That costs them money. So, and next on that is just to show you some sort of the things. I'll tell you it's not the greatest slide to look at, but I want to point out two things here. Is number one, in terms of higher ROI for your newsletter and some of the things you should focus on is if you look right here on this outlier, there's mostly DOI, which is double opt-in. Okay, so that's the first thing. So when you get someone to sign up to, let's say, your newsletter, make sure that you verify that. So, using MailChimp allow you to do that. So they then clicked in your email and actually verify the email address. That's a great starting point. You can see how that stands out completely. Another thing to realize is the email frequency per month. People freak out about how many mails they should or shouldn't send. At the highest here, 5 to 8 emails a month, right? The higher ROI of that. And the last one that I want to point out here is just the A/B testing frequency. So you can see they're always A/B testing your mail. So that's just testing subject lines as a great example to improve your open rate, and I'll talk a bit about that in a sec. And then also obviously what people are clicking on or what content they're looking at in your newsletter. So always be testing that to obviously increase the ROI and actually for your newsletters. It's highly targeted, right? So sure, with PPC and LinkedIn ads or Facebook ads or Instagram, you can put parameters together. You're targeting certain people in certain demographics, but it's never 100% exact science. But with email, though, if you've got somebody's email address and you've tracked where they've come from and you know what products they've bought, they're actually a face. They're actually a person that you now have in your database that you can go and segment and then target specifically. So as a simple example, right? If you look at this example here for Yoka, right? If they had a database of all their people that's on their list, the easiest way would have been to, obviously they know who's in Cape Town, they know who's in Johannesburg. Let's talk to the people in Johannesburg first about buying tickets to this event. Because it's in Johannesburg, they're going to come to it. Yeah, sure, some people will fly up. But people in Cape Town are going to open their mouths like, I can't attend this, it's in Joburg. What's the first thing a Cape Townian, I'm from Cape Town, are going to say, when are you bringing this Yoka Exchange to Cape Town? That's the first reply that probably someone's going to ask, right? Start with the Johannesburg people as a great example of email being targeted. I'm not going to hop onto this. Pretty much, I think every single one in the person in this room uses email. It's widely used, and if you go back to the platforms, not everybody's on Facebook. Yes, there's billions, but not everybody. Not everyone's on LinkedIn. Not everybody necessarily uses certain of those platforms that you might use. Instagram as an example, but pretty much everybody except for that one guy is going to be using email. And lastly, it integrates really well with your other channels. So at any point in time, whenever you're putting together, I'd say any sort of marketing plan, to drive sales or awareness, whatever, consider how you're going to integrate email to capture people's email addresses, right? Even if it is at your point of sale when people are buying something, figure out the simplest way that you can ask them for their email address to capture the fact that they've bought something from you, right? Two, obviously, any sort of landing page or any way to capture it, because what's going to happen, well, what is happening, and you've seen this, your Facebook clicks are getting more and more expensive, right? LinkedIn is extremely expensive already off the bat, right? So spending a couple of $1,000 is not going to get you the returns, but building an email list builds that moat around your business that in times of when shit starts getting really expensive, which it is, you can just start emailing more and more to that audience and growing that audience, and it's yours. You own that audience. You own that email list, and growing that's going to increase that ROI and obviously help you, grow your business. Talk about some myths, and this is some of my favorite things to talk about. So The first one, there is no one perfect day and time to send your newsletter. So obviously everyone thinks, Jason, what's that day? Sure, it's a Thursday at 11:15 is the best time. That's going to get the highest open rate, right? It's such bullshit, because think about where you are at 11:15 on a Thursday from one week to the next. Sometimes you're either traveling, either in meetings, maybe not even at work. Like, it varies from day to day. The only caveat to this, though, is companies like, let's say, Daily Maverick, right? They send out a daily email that people get highly upset if at 5:30 or 6 a.m. that mail is not in their inbox, okay? That's because that's what the audience wants from them. But other than that, just be smart about when you're sending a mail. Think about it in context of when you want to be sending it. There is just never one perfect day and time. There's also just being smart, like not sending it Sunday night at 3 a.m. Like, that's not really gonna get as good results. Your subject line should be short. Marketers are obsessed with length, shorter landing pages, forms, or sometimes longer landing pages. Everything needs to be compacted above the fold on your website so people can see things. It doesn't really work like that with newsletters. And if you look here, just in terms of, this isn't the best graph to be showing this, but what I want to point out here, between the 41 and sort of 61 to 70 character range, the blue lines is what you're sort of been looking at. That's the open rates. In terms of the higher the open rates for the longer, that sort of length subject line. So also, once again, this is all that comes down to testing, right? But you don't have to be using 0 to like 10 or 11 characters in a subject line. Test that stuff, okay? One thing that does help a lot is personalization. So having someone's name or something within that subject line, that's going to have a bigger effect in your open rates than sort of the length of it. Unsubscribes are bad news. Oh my gosh, people are unsubscribing. Everyone likes to brag how big their list is, or how well it's growing, but no one really wants to talk about, like, well, how many people are leaving. And what do we also do as people, as well, in our newsletters, we try and hide the unsubscribe link at the bottom there. It's like almost in light gray. There's no underlines. You can't let people unsubscribe. What do those people do? They start marking your email as spam. Let people go, right? Let them go. If they're not interested in what you're writing about, I genuinely want to be able to take a client, well, if we had to do this, and right at the top of a big red button, unsubscribe now, like the first thing, and let them stay for the content or the stuff that we're actually sending them. Because that affects everything when it comes to your open rates, when it comes to just your brand itself, trying to hide or trying to hide those links, or not letting the people that are just not interested in your stuff anymore, just let them go. It's fine. It's going to make your list, the quality of your list, better. There's some words, obviously, people think that are going to cause your emails to go straight to spam, like using free or Viagra or things like that. So yes, there is a list, right, that mail providers will use. But what's more important is the context of which you're using those words. Spelling and grammar in newsletters is way more important than those spam keywords, right? So I think that's really important when you're considering. Don't worry about the words and stuff that you are using if you think that's going to cause them to go to spam. Focus on the quality of your list and focus on spelling and grammar. What have you noticed from all spam emails how bad the spelling is and stuff? The reason for that is actually because stupider people read those mails and reply to them and think that a guy in Nigeria is a prince that's just about to offer them $1 million. Lastly, I proved this one earlier, where it was saying the more emails they send, the more you annoy your subscribers. And I like to call this, I guess, the Richard Branson effect, for example. So if Richard had to come up to me and say, Jason, I want to start a newsletter about tips on entrepreneurship and growing my businesses and things like that I've seen over the years, like, how many emails do you think I should send, a month to people? I'm like, Richie Rich, my man, you send me as many emails as you want. I just want to hear the content and the tips and the tricks and stuff that you've learned about entrepreneurship. You send that as many times as you want. And that's the same when it comes to the content you're sending. If you can afford and you've got amazing stuff to send people, send as many as you can, right? But if you only have, in a month, one or even every second month of content to send, do that rather, right? It's not about the numbers, it's about the quality of the content. Okay, so I'm going to get into two things now that sort of tie into one another, and these are some of the things that you can think about when it comes to your newsletters and mailers that you send in part of your business. So personalization and automation. So we talk about personalization, right? We all do, hey, hi, first name. I mean, that is table stakes. Like, that just gets you in the game. That does not differentiate you from any other newsletter business out there. Everyone pretty much has your first name, maybe your company name in their list. That's not going to be the stuff that is going to make or help you from a personalization perspective. When I'm talking about personalization, I'm talking about stuff like location as an example, if that's important to your business. Well, who is that person? What do they care about? What are their problems, right? How do you, but then like, well, how do you now segment this in a newsletter list if I've already got a list and there's only a name and a surname and an email address, right? Ask questions, right? Here's a great example of a newsletter that I recently, last week, signed up to, where they asked me this before I could enter in my email address. So as an example, it was actually a podcast, funny enough. So I went and obviously ticked, I'm the top one, so I ticked that. So now think about what happens now after this interaction. I've clicked that, and there were one or two other questions or whatever. The first email they sent me was their top podcasts on being a business owner, founder, growing a business. Okay? I was like, damn, this stuff's good, right? This is a really good starting point to our, let's call it, relationship. But if I had ticked web developer or designer, and he sent me a mail that just talks about web design and how to be a better coder and trips, I wouldn't care about this. I'm like, this is irritating. It's not for me. And I would probably not want to be part of that list anymore. So this is a great example of asking people stuff. Run surveys. Also, SurveyMonkey as an example. Run some simple surveys to find out more about your subscribers so that you can find out what type of personalization that you can offer in your mails to them. Another one, and this I say is more for when you've got a massive list, where you can start having multiple newsletters. So as you can see, there's like a daily newsletter, or if you're based in the UK, or there's a marketing one. So if you get to a stage where you're like, Yoko size and 80,000, 100,000 people, then you want to start segmenting it based on different types of newsletters. So people that are interested in learning versus people that are interested in, retail space, that type of thing. So that's an example of what you can also do. I spoke about this. Understand people's pain points. You know the pain points or the problems that you solve for your clients. Try and figure out a way of segmenting your list to the people that have those certain. If you only solve one or two or three of those, segment your list by that, and it'll grow over time. And then you can able to talk directly more to those problems or pain points in whether it's your sales newsletters or things like that. Super important for this because that's how we sell, right? We want to know how we fix problems for people. And it's the same when it comes to content, and it's the same when it comes to mail. This one, answer the unasked questions, right? Unanswered questions delay decisions. Now let's think about that from a context of, let's use Joker. So let's say they put on newsletter, they've got the price of the device. The first question I want to know is, how much does this cost to ship to me? So if it's not in the newsletter, it doesn't have an answer for there, now I'm going to have to go figure that out. So what does that do? It delays the decision, right? There might be other questions that I have, like what does it cost to run the machine per month? So now all of these questions are starting to come up, and it happens the same with your customers, if you can answer those questions up front, you're making that buyer journey so much shorter because you've answered the stuff and they know there's nothing else for them to ask. Well, now it's an easier decision for them to make a purchase or continue on some sort of journey that you're trying to take them on, right? And then if we turn this into sort of automation, right? So obviously you've got email marketing, newsletters that you send, content in that, but then also you run a business where somebody buys something, there's maybe some shipping involved, it takes time, or there's a home tryout, or there's a whole bunch of different types of mails you can send based on clients' interactions with your businesses. Okay, and that's where automation comes in. You get to set this stuff up once, and it just runs and runs and runs. So some of the stuff that, obviously, like for example, abandoned cart emailers, right? A very good way of people that have obviously added stuff to their cart and they haven't checked out, but you've got their email address. Upselling specific products. When they bought one, you can upsell a different one, and all this stuff will obviously get automated. But this ties so well into the personalization. The more information you have on someone, the better your automated mailers can be. So if you take This example from Warby Parker, they do prescription sunglasses in the US, a massive business. This is the type of mail you get once they know you have received that try-on box, because obviously you've signed at the courier's now, you've signed the document, the courier's signed, they know you've it, this is the mail you're going to get, right? It's telling you some information, it's being personalized because you've received the box. This is what you need to do next. Same thing happens when you return the box and you've maybe kept one of the pairs because that's the one you're going to buy. They're going to get it in the warehouse. This mail is going to fire off and saying thank you, right? And the type of copy, our box is safe and sound for us. I'm so glad you found a winner. Now sit back and relax, right? Personalized to the point of the interaction you just had with that company. And so that's when talking about that personalization, automation, how important those two sort of work together. I want to move on quickly to some better email marketing metrics. So we always want to measure the success of what we're doing, whether it is from revenue at the top line or to actually right at the bottom line, your leading indicators, which is stuff like open rates, click-through rates, those type of things. And I mentioned about this. It starts with your list, right? Without a quality list, the quality of your entire process of using email marketing is going to go down. So on average, the quality of a list will probably deteriorate by 20% every single year. I mean, what happens? People's email addresses change. There's typos when they sign up with their email addresses that you don't necessarily pick up. It's just general churn from the newsletter, people unsubscribing, or as I mentioned, in terms of the email addresses and that type of thing. So the key is to try and keep that list as clean and it doesn't have to be a massive list. As I mentioned to you, I had a 50, 60 person list to start out with, and we made money off that, right? A quality list is better than a quantity. So I think the key to this is to keep your bounce rate under 2%. So that's like a nice metric to work on, okay? And the reason why I say that is because you must remember how smart Google and Microsoft are when it comes to managing people's inboxes. What's going to happen if they start noticing a lot of the mails you are sending to their customer or to their email address that they host, that there's a high bounce rate because you're getting the email addresses wrong, or they're being marked as spam or things like that, right? They're going to start not having your emails be delivered. They're going to put them into the spam. They're going to put them into those sort of promotions folders and things like that. So that's why I say is focus on that bounce rate. Go and look at those people, those email addresses that have bounced, and figure out why they have and remove them. Rather have that clean list versus having big sending numbers and a high bounce rate. Another thing to also work on that is also sort of, and comes back to this, is re-engage the people that haven't opened mails. So a lot of the software that you'd use allows you to see who hasn't opened mails in the last 6 months. Write an automation for this. So have 1 or 2 emails that you'd send out saying, hey, we really, really miss you. I see you haven't opened our mails in a long time. Here's maybe a 10% coupon that you could use to buy something on our site. And then there's another one's like, listen, I know you're probably busy or you haven't been opening our mails. I'll tell you what, when you're ready again, we're going to unsubscribe you, but when you're ready again, more than welcome to subscribe. And you then just let them go and you unsubscribe them yourself. Once again, open rates. Google and Microsoft are watching. Don't think they're not. The more people that are opening your mails, the more chances are you getting your mails into their inboxes. So here's some things that you can talk about to obviously improve your open rates, which is going to improve your delivery, and that's ultimately where your sales start. If you don't have people opening your mails, you're dead in the water. So number one is to use a better email address. And when I mean that, I'm just talking about not to use obviously like a Gmail or a Hotmail or whatever to be sending from, but put a person there. Like put your name at your company's domain as an example. You'll be surprised at how many companies use no reply at company. It's so impersonal, right? You'll be even surprised, like HubSpot, they have millions of people on their database, and they send it from a person, right? Sure, that mailbox is not one person, because if like 10,000 people reply, it's a mess. But the fact is that they've made it, the human connection, very strong. So that's a good starting point, because if you look at your inbox at the moment, 90% of those mails are from people. So why not keep the trend with that in terms of when you're mailing, it comes from a person, but obviously in a business context. Personalize the subject line. Put the person's name in there. Figure out a nice way to keep it included there, maybe their company name or something like that. Personalization always, always, always increases your open rates. Use questions. So a little simple, 4 or 5 word question also gets people curious. People are curious by nature. Nick was talking about it earlier. highlighting benefits, right? So not necessarily their stats and things like that. People are curious about those type of things too. And lastly, just keep it simple. Like, don't overthink your subject line. I think a lot of people, we overthink it because of like, it's so important for a person to be able to see it. But think about, go look at your sent items and go look at the mails you've sent to colleagues or friends or, clients or whatever. You've probably thought for about 2 seconds what you were going to write in that subject line, because everything's going in the body of the email. Those simple subject lines work really well across. We do a lot of cold emailing, but cold email and newsletters. I want to talk a bit quickly about call to action. So having people, click and actually take an action from your newsletter, whether it's even replying to the newsletter or clicking a link to out to your website or whatever. So obviously, when it comes to call to actions, what do we want to do? We want to increase the number of clicks. You want to know how do you increase the number of clicks in the newsletter? You use less links, okay? And once again, that comes down to when you're writing some of these newsletters, is to be concise about if you were to decide what one thing, if I wanted somebody to take one action when I sent this mail, what would I want them to do? And then you can sort of structure that whole newsletter around that thing to have one link. And then you know that entire focus of that is going to be that one thing. Cool. People always want to ask me, like, what tools should I be using when it comes to mailers and things like that? There's a ton of tools and stuff. And I find the problem that happens a lot of the times is they'll come and ask me those questions about, like, oh, Jason, like, we're getting such shitty open rates. I don't know if this is working for us. MailChimp is so shit. I don't like it anymore because it's doing this. I'm like, it's never, ever, ever the tool. We're in 2020 where there's so many options out there that the quality of these tools that you're using are serving hundreds of millions of customers. They're getting it right. It's almost always, it's on your side. There's something not either configured correctly or using it wrong. You've sat on this list. You bought an email list like from 3 years ago that you just dumped in here, and now you're getting this like 40% bounce rate, and now it's MailChimp's fault. It's not. But let's go through some of them so that you can see some of the stuff that I love using. So we talk about software. Hands down, without a doubt, Campaign Monitor is the Rolls-Royce of newsletter software, right? There's no comparison in terms of the others. However, they are just as great. I just find from a simple to use, and they charge from the first email that you send. Now you think to yourself, oh shit, I wish it was a free tool like MailChimp, and I've got MailChimps on my next slide. But the reason you think about that is if people are paying to send newsletters from the first newsletter, the quality of the people that are on their platform is a lot higher because they've actually got money that they're willing to spend. Okay, so that's from a deliverability point of view, really, really great. Also just find the way they've done, how the interface works is really great. Sounds like I work for these guys. I don't. I've just been using them for years, and I really highly recommend them as a newsletter platform. However, MailChimp is just as great. If you've got it and you've a whole bunch of things set up, don't move. I told you, it's not the tool, right? It's probably you. So we've had customers come to us like, they're like, no, I'm going to fix your mail tool. I'm not moving you. You've got so many amazing things set up here. You've got data sitting in MailChimp. Let's go use that stuff. Let's just fix the things that are not quite set up correctly, or let's fix a couple of things and carry you. Amazing platform. I just obviously have a favorite, which is not the end of the world. In terms of automation, both MailChimp and Campaign Monitor have their own automation that runs. So talking about all those mails that will trigger based on certain things. However, when it comes to sort of automation, drip.com is king in this game. Really, really amazing tool to be using as well. But once again, if you've got stuff set up in MailChimp and you're just starting out, carry on with that stuff. When you're getting more serious about it and you're starting to do some really highly personal stuff, use Drip. So we use them for some pretty smart automations in terms of like our business from things. It's a really, really great tool to use. Another one that does it pretty well as well as Intercom. They've also got additional tools. You might have heard them. They've got a live chat that they do. I think they do SMS. They do a whole bunch of other things. Really expensive, but amazing tool as well. I think it's about 3 times the price of Drip per month. This thing can get expensive really, really quickly as you scale just numbers of emails that you do. But it's a great product to check out as well. I won't touch on this too much. Transactional emails, it's like, if you think of like Takealot example, they send millions of emails per day. When you're getting to hundreds of thousands of mails, you're going to want to use a provider that can has a high deliverability rate. You don't want to be using the likes of like a MailChimp or whatever. A company like SendGrid would be amazing for that. So they get like really, really great delivering emails. So obviously you can see sort of it's very developer-centric. So I'm just going to skip through these. Postmark is a competitor to them, also really great. Verifying email database. So let's take that database and clean it up. Neverbounce is a great service for that. I think for $1, you can put your entire list in there, and they'll give you like a percentage score of how well of what email addresses are valid and which are obviously no longer in use, and a couple of things. Obviously, if you've got a high percentage is really good, cool. Just take that, your list is good, don't worry about it. But if it's low, pay them a little bit more. I think it's 0.01 cent per email address, and they'll actually give you the lists broken down to what is valid and what is not valid. We use this tool for ourselves all the time. It's really valuable and it's cheap to do. Another great tool to use is whenever you're sending our newsletter, we do this every single time. Now, it's quite weird because you wouldn't really necessarily take a tool like this seriously based on this, but it's probably one of the most useful tools we have used in our business. When you're about to send a newsletter, you saw me send yourself a test. That's great. Everything looks nice. Send that email address a test. Obviously, every time you load this page, it gives you a new one. And then you check your score. It breaks down your mail into almost the technical things about what is and isn't working, or what you're going to be negatively scored on. Why is it going to go into spam? That type of thing. It's mail-tester.com. Amazing tool. And then just give it to either somebody that's a little bit technical if there's stuff to fix, or it'll tell you certain things that you haven't done in your newsletter to up that as well, your score. So it gives you a score at a 10, and then off you can work with that. Email templates, where to find them. Nowadays, there used to be a whole bunch of companies you could go buy them from. Right now, both MailChimp and Campaign Monitor have amazing templates to use. Just go with those. They're so good nowadays that you don't need to be having to go and find them online and all these various servers importing them. Use their tools. Give it to a designer that they will love you for it. It's so easy to use. This is the company that changed their name, and I hate it, but it's now called Uplers, right? It used to be called Email Monks, and what you would do is create any type of design that you wanted. You'd send it to these guys, and they would turn around that into a coded newsletter that you can import onto any platform. They've got all the listed there. You pick your one. They'll even do it for you. Okay? I built our email marketing company off the back of these guys. They just branded. I'm not a fan of the new name. I love the monk vibe that they had. I felt I was being looked after by a bunch of monks. But this is amazing for any personal, really custom stuff you guys want to do. Don't pay someone 10 grand to be developing your newsletter. Just go to these guys. They'll get it done for you every single time. One of my favorite companies online to be using. Email copy also is super important. Like, how do you also stand out from your mails? Like, if you read a take-lot mail versus a purpose mail, they're very standard. Hey, we've shipped this to you. This is what it is. How do you stand out from that crowd? Right? How do you be memorable? And a great example of this is if you do Google, if anyone writes this down, CD baby email. It's one of the most screenshotted mails ever, and it was about a guy that wrote an amazing shipping email about when somebody, once you ordered, and what that whole process they took through, and there was like a whole bunch, like, oh, we just received your order, the warehouse is just throwing a party in your name, and so like they wrote this whole really amazing story about you just having sent an order through. And this is a great place for this. Find the inspiration of the type of mails that you're wanting to be sending, and use their examples, right? These guys have spent thousands of dollars on copywriters and stuff. Just go find the stuff that works and use it. Retargeting, this is a tool I've seen. I haven't specifically used myself, but it sounds really, really cool. It's Quokka, Quokka. A lot about if people don't open a mail, well, it tries to retarget them on Facebook and LinkedIn and things like that. So you're trying to reach people on multiple platforms. It sort of plugs into all of them so that you're getting the highest open rate or response rate to your stuff. It's definitely something to take a look at. As I said, I haven't played with it, but I think what they're trying to do is really, really smart. For any of you running e-commerce stores, I'm sure if you're going to be using it, this used to be called Conversio. They've just sold to the Rolls-Royce company I'm speaking to about. It's now called CM Commerce. Amazing tool for anyone running an e-commerce store. Plug these guys in. They're going to generate some really smart stuff for you to increase repeat sales, your coupon codes, receipts, a whole bunch of really smart stuff when it comes to e-commerce and data. Amazing. Competitor to them is Klaviyo. Also really smart. I think they've got more features than CM Commerce. But once again, just pick one. Don't stress over it. Pick one. Have a look at it and give it a shot. A lot of them have their free accounts to start off with. And then I think the last one is to go on about is email examples. Once again, you're stop trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to the type of mails that you're having to send or automated mails that you should set up. Go and look at some of the companies in the world that have sent the best mailers out there and just go and look what they've done and just use them for inspiration to almost just copy them and go with that. So this is really good emails, similar to what I showed you earlier. Pick a category of mails and they're going to show you some of the most amazing mailers from a design perspective and all of that. Go and just use that. Like there's no need to go overthink things. A couple of email tools to dev. I'm going to quickly skim over this. If you're sending a lot of mails and have you test stuff in various browsers, this stuff will test an email newsletter all the way back to Outlook 19 foot sack. So like you'll get screenshots of every single email client, what your mail looks like from mobile through every version of Outlook to Gmail to everything. Amazing tool if you're doing a lot of email type dev stuff and you highly personalized things. Great to look at for developers. This is pretty cool to use, I thought. So you can create dynamic images that you use in your mails. So you're running a special, 5 days special, you can start an image here. It'll help you set everything up nicely. So when you put that email in your newsletter, it doesn't matter what day the person opens that mail, that image is going to show the correct, let's say, date on it. So 3 days to go if they open it on the Wednesday, or 4 days to go when it's the day before the Tuesday. Very, very smart. It's free. So that's pretty cool. It's pickapick.live. And then lastly, just show you, people always want to know some of my favorite newsletters. Obviously, it's tailored to all the stuff I like. But also, I think as examples, go look at some of the stuff that other people, what do you like about certain mailers that you read? My absolute favorite is this company. The reason why I love them so much is their entire business is just email. They have 1 million people plus on their newsletter database. They send a daily mailer. It's about tech and industry and things like that. It's about a $30 to $50 million a year business just sending newsletters. It's crazy. I like the type of content they send. That's why I'm a big fan of them. Product hunt. So there's a lot of tools and things on this that, once again, this does come through to me. It's not actually like a thing that they're always going to say about newsletters, but it's all about top apps and things that have launched. They send a daily one out, and then I'll check that out at least 2-3 times a week. So it's just something that I really enjoy. Quora.com, so questions and answers. What's great about this is it becomes personalized to stuff I read about and look on the site. So people are asking questions and stuff. So this like news feed mailer comes through to me sort of on a weekly basis, which is great. I mean, you can look at the last question there. It's pretty relevant to want to know if people want to do stupid things and what people would answer to that. So yeah, it's quite an interesting newsletter that I get through. And last but not least is Dense Discovery. I've just recently subscribed. This is like, it makes me feel good when I read this one. Because I've read about 2 or 3 of them. Some really cool apps and tools and websites, interesting books and things, thought-provoking stuff. This is like, it's a feel-good type of newsletter. Only once, I think it's once on a Tuesday or something like that. I really, really enjoy reading that. Calms the nerves and stuff. So I think that's it. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be out here on the side here, happy to help you on anything to do with email. I love talking email. That's all I do all day long at Firing Sword. So yeah, thank you very much.